Brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Frennis. This edition highlights key LinkedIn posts on commercial fleets from weeks 02 and 03. Frennis supports automotive enterprises and consultancies with market, customer, and competitive intelligence in the commercial fleet sector, with a strong focus on digital solutions and emerging technologies. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been tracking the conversation around commercial fleets, and, looking at the last couple of weeks, the tone has really shifted.
It has. It feels like we're moving from experimentation to, hard reality.
Exactly. Less about what the future might look like and a lot more about what implementation actually costs.
Right. It's a move from that pilot phase mentality to hard-nosed operational reality. I'd say the industry is waking up to the complexity of scale. We're not just buying one or two electric vans anymore.
No, we're talking about heavy-duty trucks, the grid constraints that can kill a project.
And the safety tech. It's fundamentally changing how fleets are managed.
The conversation clusters are so distinct this time. You've got heavy-duty electrification, which is proving to be more viable than many expected.
Then there's the energy piece, which is arguably becoming more critical than the vehicles themselves.
And finally, that surge in AI-driven safety and, the operational politics that come with it.
That's the roadmap. And I think the best place to start is with the heavy metal. Because for so long, the real skepticism was around those bigger Class 4 through Class 6 vehicles.
The argument was always the same, right?
Yeah.
Batteries are too heavy, range is too short, cost is astronomical.
But the data we're seeing now suggests that whole narrative is, it's outdated. The standout story has to be the one from John Henry Harris about FedEx.
Yeah, that was huge. This isn't a press release about a future plan. FedEx has ordered 53 vehicles to kick off the year.
And that's a significant move. Harris points out something crucial here. This is not a pilot. Fleets have been stuck in what he calls pilot purgatory for nearly 2 decades. Buying one weird retrofitted truck, testing it, realizing it doesn't work, and scrapping it.
This order feels like a real shift to deployment. What really caught my eye in his breakdown was the price.
Mm-hmm.
He notes that these vehicles, from Harbinger specifically, are achieving acquisition price parity with diesel, starting at $103,000.
That is the headline. That's effectively the same price as a Freightliner MT-55. Usually we're talking about a massive green premium, often double the cost.
So how are they doing it? Is it just subsidies, or is there something fundamentally different here?
It's the engineering strategy. Harris explains it through vertical integration. A lot of those early electric trucks were Franken trucks.
Taking a standard diesel chassis and just ripping out the engine.
Exactly. Ripping it out and bolting in a battery pack from someone else. It's inefficient and expensive. Harbinger, he says, is building the chassis, the battery packs, the powertrain, all in-house.
So they own the supply chain.
They own the metal and the bits. Harris says you have to own the metal to hit the right price, but you also have to own the bits, the software stack. If you're paying mock-ups on everything, you'll never hit parity.
That moves us away from this idea that green tech is a luxury item. It becomes a rational economic choice.
It does. But while we're seeing these wins in North America, the sheer scale of what's happening in Europe really puts it in perspective. Natalie Mild shared some numbers that are just difficult to visualize.
The scale is massive.
She points out there are roughly 6 million heavy trucks on European roads. To electrify that, you're talking about 2 terawatt hours of battery capacity.
2 terawatt hours. How do you even contextualize that?
Well, she did. She noted it's equivalent to nearly 3 days of Spain's entire electricity demand.
Wow.
It's a colossal amount of energy. But her point wasn't just about the size, it was a critique of how we plan to charge them.
She was pushing back against that megawatt corridor idea, wasn't she?
Exactly. This myth that we need to replicate the diesel model giant filling stations, blasting a megawatt of power into a truck in 20 minutes, she argues that's not the primary solution. The low-hanging fruit is depot charging.
Because the trucks sleep.
They do. If a truck is parked for 8 to 10 hours overnight, you don't need a megawatt charger. You need a 200 to 400 kilowatt charger. It's cheaper, less stress on the battery, and way easier for the grid.
And you co-locate that with solar and stationary batteries.
That's the winning formula, she suggests. But, we have to be realistic. We're not replacing 6 million trucks this year. There was a very pragmatic post from Andrew Savage about what fleets can do right now.
Bridge solution.
Right. He highlighted the use of HVO 100 hydrotreated vegetable oil.
So for anyone not familiar, this is basically a renewable diesel alternative. It works in existing engines.
It does. It's a drop-in fuel. He notes his operations have used it for over 355 low-carbon hauls. The key metric is it offers about a 90% reduction in carbon emissions.
And that's where the pragmatism comes in. From a fleet manager's perspective, dropping carbon by 90% today without buying new trucks is a massive win.
It's about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. While you're planning grid upgrades, you can switch fuels and make an immediate impact.
And speaking of planning, the funding is definitely helping. Nahui Allen flagged Oregon's Zero Fleet program, which is putting up $17 million.
With big rebates, too, up to $60,000 per vehicle.
And in the UK, Emma Tyrer mentioned the government offering up to £120,000 off electric trucks.
So the subsidies are an accelerant, but this brings us to the second theme, and honestly, the biggest hurdle. You can buy the truck, you can get the rebate, but can you plug it in?
The grid bottleneck.
It's the number one constraint. The conversation has totally shifted from range anxiety to connection anxiety. Natasha Fry put it very bluntly in her post.
She said most depots were basically just built as parking lots.
Right. They were never designed to be power plants. And if you get that wrong, it's an operational disaster. She highlights the risk of vehicles ready before the power is.
So you order the trucks, they arrive, the lease payments start.
But the distribution network operator, the DNO, tells you the substation upgrade is 18 months away.
And you have $1 million of assets just sitting there gathering dust.
Precisely. Her advice is to engage the DNOs and landlords immediately, before you even sign the purchase order.
And even if the power is there, the cost isn't static. Mauricio Sardi shared some analysis from Slovenia that really lit this up for me.
The volatility he found is staggering. Sardi's data showed charging during peak demand can be 10 to 100 times more expensive than off-peak.
10 to 100 times. That just destroys any TCO model instantly.
It does. If you treat an electric truck like a diesel one and just plug it in the second it gets back, usually at the evening peak, you are going to pay the highest possible rate.
So dumb charging is financially unviable.
It's financial suicide for a fleet. Sardi points out that smart energy management, shifting that load automatically, can save 50 to 70%. It's not just about getting power, it's when you get it.
And this gets even more complicated when you scale up. Roby Moyano raised the point that a single electric truck uses about 10 times the energy of a car.
So when you have 50 of them returning at 5 p.m., Moyano calls that an energy orchestration problem. You can't just rely on the grid to absorb it.
Which ties back to what Phil Jordan-Nussbauer was suggesting.
Right, the smart system approach, combining solar PV, charging infrastructure, and BS.
BS being battery energy storage systems. So giant batteries at the depot.
Exactly. Think of the BS as a shock absorber. You fill those stationary batteries when energy is cheap or the sun is out. Then, when the trucks come in during peak hours, you charge them from your battery, not the grid.
It turns the depot into its own microgrid.
It's the only way the numbers work at scale. You have to manage the electrons as carefully as you manage the drivers.
Okay, let's pivot to that driver element, because the third cluster was all about safety and the tech inside the cab. And the shift is from reactive recording to proactive prevention.
We're really seeing AI mature in this space. For years, dash cams were passive black boxes. They just recorded a crash so you could figure out who to blame later.
The new tech is about intervening before the crash happens. The post from Hamza Hussein and Tayyeb Shahzad Butt on Motive's new dash cam focused on edge AI. For someone who isn't technical, why is that distinction between edge and cloud so critical?
It's all about speed, latency. If a camera sees a car cut you off, you don't have time for that video to upload to the cloud, get processed, and send a signal back. That takes seconds.
And a crash takes milliseconds.
Right. Edge AI means the computer chip is right there on the device. It processes everything in real time. It understands context instantly.
So it can spot lane departures, unsafe following distances.
And even driver distraction, and then use a voice assistant to alert the driver immediately. It's about breaking that chain of events.
And the results being reported are pretty remarkable. Liam Wallstrom shared a case study on Redway Transport that just stopped me in my tracks.
The Redway case is the gold standard of what this tech promises.
Right.
They went from 24 at-fault accidents in a year to zero.
Zero. That's a statistic that sounds almost too good to be true.
It really highlights the power of this tech. And Lydia Raven shared similar data from Samsara, noting that Midland Tire Services reduced accidents by 54%.
But there's a cultural hurdle here, right? Putting an AI camera in the cab that watches the driver's face, it screams Big Brother.
That is the perennial challenge. But Ruthie Ayers shared a really smart perspective from Speedy Hire. The strategy is to shift the narrative from tattletale to coaching.
So it's not about punishment.
Exactly. If the system is just used to generate a report of bad drivers so you can fire them, it will fail. Drivers will revolt. But if it's used to just nudge the driver, hey, you're following too close, and the driver corrects it, and no one in the office ever hears about it.
That's coaching. It's a tool for them, not just for the boss.
Exactly. And Chris Cabrera from Linux touched on making these tools easier to manage by unifying video and telematics into one platform, Litzogo.
Which is crucial, because we are all drowning in dashboards. You can't have managers logging into 3 systems to figure out what happened.
No, silos are the enemy of efficiency.
And that data overload leads perfectly into our final theme. Data, operations, and the human factor. Mark Canton had a fantastic analogy about the shelf life of data.
The milk analogy, I loved this. He said, your old fleet data is not a fine wine, it's milk.
Meaning it spoils.
It expires. There's this tendency to hoard data, thinking 15 years of history is a gold mine. Canton says that's a sunk cost fallacy. The operational reality of 5 years ago, fuel prices, vehicle types, has nothing to do with today.
So keeping that old data isn't just useless, it can be actively harmful.
It clouds the picture. It slows everything down. He suggests focusing only on the last 3 to 5 years. That's your window of relevance.
That's a really actionable tip. But beyond the data, Selenay Parlak brought up the politics of operations, which we don't talk about enough.
It's the reality of organizational silos. She points out that the department paying for the equipment isn't always the one using it. So procurement might choose a charger because it's $500 cheaper.
Looks great on their budget for the quarter.
But if that charger has a high failure rate or doesn't integrate with the software, operations is left holding the bag. The better technical choice often loses to the one that's politically expedient.
It's a reminder you have to understand who holds the power in that buying committee. Speaking of honesty, Jamie Sands had a call to action that I think everyone should hear. He wants us to stop polishing the results of trials.
The Instagram versus reality problem. He argues that freight trials shouldn't be these perfect success stories. They should be messy.
Because the failures are where the learning happens.
Exactly. If a trial failed because the power wasn't where the drawing said it was, that is valuable intelligence. If we hide the messiness, every other fleet is doomed to repeat those mistakes.
And finally, David Fish from Ford Pro touched on just how complex these fleets are. They're rarely uniform.
No, they're mixed fleets. It's a game of Tetris. You have Fords, you have another brand, you have EVs, you have diesel. His whole point is that dashboards need to reflect this chaos. You can't expect a manager to have 5 screens open.
Interoperability has to be the key word.
It has to be. One screen to rule them all. Otherwise, the tech's efficiency gains are lost in administrative overhead.
It really seems like integration is the word of the week. Integrating the chassis and battery to save cost, integrating solar and chargers to save the grid, integrating safety data to save the driver.
That is the thread connecting all of these posts. The era of isolated experiments is over. The systems and the departments all have to talk to each other.
So as we wrap up, what's the one question you think our listeners should be asking themselves this week?
I'd ask, are you planning your energy strategy with the same rigor as your vehicle strategy? Because the risk isn't that you can't buy the truck. The risk is you become the fleet with shiny EVs sitting in a dark depot because you forgot to call the utility company 2 years ago.
And are you treating your data like wine or like milk?
Check the expiration date.
If you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also, check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, future mobility and market evolution, and next-gen vehicle intelligence. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.